It's been called the holy grail of marketing. The ability to understand what makes a customer buy a certain product and whether that $1 million spent on a Super Bowl ad was really worth it. This is almost impossible to do. A new startup called Alembic, thanks to AI, has finally cracked the code. They can take an ocean of data and find out what marketing campaigns work and what's a flop. How will this change marketing? How will it change the future of business? We explore all that and more on today's episode of AI Curious. My name is Jeff Wilser. I'm a journalist, I'm a human, and I'm curious about AI. And our guest today is Abby Kearns, the CTO of Alembic. Now, there's a lot in AI that's very flashy and sizzly and hypey. Text to photo, text to video, text to podcast, AI agents, and yes, you know I have a soft spot for all of that stuff, and we'll cover it more in the future. But there's also a less discussed, under the hood world that I think is important to understand and to check in on from time to time. Because this under the hood stuff might in the end be just as transformative. As Abby says in our call, for many companies, the largest expense is on marketing. Many companies spend billions and billions of dollars. It's their top line item, and there's often no good way to figure out if the marketing is working. I know, I worked in marketing analysis, like quantitative database analysis, for years. It's really tricky. They design these elaborate tests, and sometimes they give insights, often they do not. It is a vexing problem for all CMOs. And that's where Alembic comes in. They recently raised $14 million in Series A, and one of the backers is the legendary media mogul Jeffrey Katzenberg. As Katzenberg told VentureBeats, quote, "There's trillions and trillions of dollars spent every year in brand marketing, and for the most part, there's actually no hard data that's proof of ROI," unquote. So it was fun to dig into this with Abby, and she shares what in AI is making this tech possible. It actually has more to do with COVID and contact tracing and scientific analysis and research than you would guess, as well as the broader implications in the future. And as a veteran tech enterprise exec with gobs of experience, Abby shares advice for how business leaders, marketing or otherwise, can grapple with AI, use it, as well as her wider predictions for the mainstream adoption of AI. It was fun to nerd out on this more specific niche use case, but it is still massively scalable in the world of marketing. And I think even non-marketers will appreciate this example as something of an AI case study. So with that, please enjoy my conversation with Abby Kearns, CTO of Alembic. Abby, welcome to AI Curious.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. I'm so excited to be here.
So let's kind of ground the listeners in some basics of what you and your team are pulling off. Talk a bit about how you're using AI to really tease out marketing insights that were virtually impossible in the past.
So at the end of the day, Alembic is a marketing intelligence platform. And that means that we are able to ingest tons of data, both from customers and third-party media data, a variety of different data sets, and we're expanding that data set daily. And we ingest that data, we apply time series to that data. So we're taking that data and looking at what is happening over time. And then through a series of very novel cross-domain algorithms, we're able to both surface amazing insights, so things that are really impactful to businesses, and then also taking that a step further, really connecting the dots on what drove those outcomes. And we focused on outcomes because at the end of the day, that's what you care about as a business. Like, what does this mean to me? And then we help them connect the dots to those, what are the steps that led to that outcome? And that outcome may be revenue. Like, hey, this drove $10 million for your business, and here are the things that led to that outcome. So companies can double down on those investments to say, maybe we take that 10 million and turn it into 15 million, or maybe we replicate some of the steps in different ways and drive greater efficiencies in the business.
Maybe can you give us kind of a concrete example of something you're able to analyze, like a campaign or what you're able to help a business understand that wouldn't have been possible in the era before AI?
We all get email campaigns. If you are on the internet today, you're getting an email
Right.
campaign. In fact, now you get an email and a text campaign, which, we won't talk
Drives me
about that.
crazy, the whole
Same.
fish.
Same. But we're all recipients of email campaigns. But how many of us really, when it comes down to it, bought a product because of that email campaign?
Mm.
How many? For many of us, it's a combination. I live in San Francisco. It's a combination maybe of I saw a billboard driving down 101 and I got an email.
Mhm.
And maybe I went to a conference, or maybe I took a webinar, or maybe I listened to a podcast. It's usually a culmination of a variety of different things that are both online as
Mhm.
well as offline.
Mhm.
Billboard or a podcast, or hey, I saw their logo because they are now the arena sponsor, or they, had a Super Bowl ad. It's a what I've described is we're getting inundated by brands and narratives and marketing messages across the board. But very few of us are really reacting and making decisions on one thing,
Right.
with the exception of those late night Instagram scrolls where we get suckered into buying something off of Instagram. But short of that, it's usually a combination of things. And so if I'm a business and you're saying, okay, well, here's our strategy for 2025, and which of these things worked? I don't know. Which is it? Maybe.
Let me know from off base here. My understanding is on top of helping businesses make better choices about that or have better inferences there, you're also able to help them identify and isolate impacts of things like an arena sponsorship or like a billboard. Because right now, to your point, Abby, it's really freaking hard for a business to figure out, did this billboard, how effective is that? How the hell do you know people on the 101, is that the money you spent on the sign, is that worth it? If you sponsor an arena, is that worth it? If you spend $1 million on a Super Bowl ad, is that worth it? Am I warm there? And if so, talk a bit about
Yeah.
how impactful it is and kind of the way you're able to pull that off using AI.
Well, I mean, absolutely, because that's really how marketing dollars for the world's largest companies are spent. They're everything from Alembic sponsorships to
Mhm.
F1 races to, it's a myriad of things. If you look at the world's biggest companies where those marketing dollars are spent, and building brand is the most important thing for most of these companies.
Mhm.
Some of the bigger brands like Procter Gamble and L'Oreal each spend $10 billion a year on promotion and advertising. That is a lot of money
Mhm.
for many of these companies. It's a large amount of their overall annual spend. And so understanding the opportunities with that investment, the ability to articulate to leadership, to the board, to say, hey, we invested all of this money and here's the impact that had on our business, becomes a much more meaningful conversation.
How this is possible now, right? What are the main breakthroughs that is allowing this innovation? And then once we have a better understanding of that, we can kind of hit home of what's this really cool analysis that can be done.
Yeah, I would say, well, 5 years ago, we had this really significant global impact called a pandemic. And it was all of a sudden everybody became armchair epidemiologists, and we're looking at contact tracing became a very common phrase a lot of us used on a regular basis. And I bring that up because there is a lot of evolution and breakthrough in machine learning and data science around contact tracing. And our founder, Tomasz Puj, who's our CEO, had this amazing idea that, well, isn't identifying contact tracing and identifying the source of an outbreak similar to identifying what are the things that drove revenue for a business?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of similarities to say, okay, there's a
Understood.
lot of
Yep.
things
Right.
happening,
There's
But what's the
a ton
central?
of variables, a ton of, it's difficult to tease out what is, to your point, context trace. Like yes, I was in a supermarket last week and then I went to a party on Tuesday and it's hard to figure out where I was, what I was doing. Similarly, that's is what's, I heard a jingle on a podcast. I saw a billboard. I got an email. Hard to figure out what they mean by the products. Hard to figure out what gave me COVID. So it's actually a great analogy.
Yeah, and so he had an epiphany during the pandemic, say, "Hey, there's a lot of similarities here in like the problem we're trying to solve. Could we take the leaps that are being made mathematically there and apply that to the same problem?"
Mm-hmm.
And so that really begat a multi-year exploration into taking a lot of the innovation and the innovative steps and papers that are being released around not just contact tracing, but there's been a lot of evolution in biotech as well. Mm-hmm. And we've seen a combination of both leaps that are being made in AI and large language models, as well as leaps and a lot of novel approaches that are being tried out now and experimented with on the data science side. And what we've really tried to do is combine both of those things. And so the why now is important because it really took the last 5 years of evolution and innovation happening on both AI as well as on the data science side to get us to the point we're at now. And so a lot of our heavy lift of that identifying the connective tissue is really done by our widely cross-domain algorithms that really borrow from what's happening in pharma and biotech to what's happening in additional research on neural networks. And we're just taking and borrowing from a lot of different domains to say, how do we apply that to understanding what are the most impactful things in a business and starting to connect the dots there.
Interesting. I know you've had a deep background in tech innovation for years and years, not just in marketing. I'm curious for your thoughts of, so I'm guessing a lot of listeners to podcasts who are in marketing and many who are in business, but not marketing. I'm guessing that the insights here and the broader strategy you're using and this kind of data analysis can be used other verticals beyond marketing. How talk a little bit about how this type of multi-variable data analysis, that if it can be used for contact tracing and used for marketing, probably has many other vertical applications too. How do you see this evolving and impacting business in other ways in the future as well?
Well, I will say I've only been in marketing for a hot minute. I've been in tech 25 years.
Right, exactly.
All of it's been in enterprise,
right?
Largely enterprise infrastructure and large scale distributed systems. And this is my first foray into marketing. So I'm learning a lot about the business of marketing in real time. But what was really, really an interesting learning for me, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are longtime marketers, they're going to be like, duh. But it never really occurred to me that the marketing teams in these large organizations have the biggest big data problem. The amount of data and I knew there was a lot of data. I did not fully appreciate the level of data that marketing teams are having to sift through and reason about and understand and turn that into something that is intelligent for the business. Like I never really fully appreciated the depth of the problem.
Yeah.
And we've all been talking about data's the new oil for years and big data and data lakes. Like I feel like this is a conversation that's been ongoing for well over a decade. But I didn't understand that the biggest challenge for most businesses is marketing data. And it isn't that companies don't have the data or don't have access to it. They do. The problem is, what do you do with all that data? It's, we started talking years ago about NLP and the ability to just ask a human readable question and get an answer. But what question do you ask? What do you do with that answer? And so we're now at a point where the technologies have converged to allow us to not only not have to worry about asking the right question, but really saying, what are the things that are most interesting to my business? And oh, by the way, let's use some LLMs to make that human readable so that someone can read it and understand the action that needs to be taken. Anyone anyone in the organization, from a CMO down to an IC level person, individual contributor, can read it and say, oh, I know exactly what I need to do with this information. I'm not having to dig through 17 layers of dashboards, do manual correlation in a spreadsheet, write up a PowerPoint. Wouldn't it be great if you could identify these things, connect the dots for me, and oh, by the way, give me 5 bullet points of things that are most impactful to my business and what action I should take? Wouldn't that be great?
I love that. And how do you see it, given that your background, as you point out, is so much as much beyond marketing over the years? What other elements of business do you see this kind of data analysis being most fruitful in the future?
Every layer of business. Like, I think
Hmm.
I was talking to a friend that's in venture recently, and they were like, where do you see the next couple of years? Like, what do you think is going to be interesting? And I said, well, I think what's going to be interesting, particularly in the context of AI, and like, I'm using AI very broadly. There will be specialists that listen to this are like, well, what do you mean by that? Because AI has a lot of connotations and use cases, but air quote AI.
Yep.
Look, large language models are becoming a commodity. They're all largely similar when you compare everything from Llama, the Llama models from Meta, to Databricks' DBRX model, to OpenAI, to Anthropic, to Gemini. They're largely becoming very similar. And so what we're going to see is the commodification of LLMs, which gives basically anyone easy access to either an open source self-hosted model or leveraging, a cloud-based model like OpenAI. Everyone has options and access. I mean, I suspect you run one at your house. I have access to several on my own. So I think everyone has access to, it's like internet now. Everyone has access to it.
Yes.
So what's really going to be interesting is, how do you take that to surface and identify areas in your business that you missed, that maybe go undetected because data is hard to get at. It's so siloed, particularly if you're a global company. Think about how a lot of these companies are ran. You have a team in Germany and a team in the UK and a team in the US. And oftentimes that data isn't necessarily easily shared between those different teams. And so how do you understand if there's, someone attended a conference in Germany but came back to the US and said, you know what, I love this. I'm going to go to a webinar and I'm going to buy this product. How do you start to connect those dots? And so one of the things we're really trying to do is help find that needle in the haystack in all that data, and really say, how do you answer those questions in a way without having to understand, am I asking the right question? And so I think that the real opportunity is, irrespective of if it's marketing or finance or sales, is how do I understand what is interesting in my business without having to ask the right question first?
And maybe to your point, maybe the wrong question is, which silo is it impactful in? And then the real answer is, it's helping bridge all the silos, right? So if I hear you right, there's likely data right now in some companies' supply division, and there's data in marketing and data in inventory and production. And these different pools of data are being used in a more micro setting by each vertical. But there's obviously the org charts are all designed so that the inventory vice president is focused on this and the marketing vice president this and so on. But actually, it's too complex right now, right? For any one person to try and make sense and heads and tails of how the third quarter inventory level speaks to the second or fourth quarter, sales volume. But maybe AI is able, by kind of like bringing in all this data, respective of what division and traditional vertical it is, you're able to ask and answer better questions. Am I on the right track there?
Not only ask and answer better questions, but maybe not even ask the right question and still get the answer you're looking for. Because, sometimes that's dependent on asking the question in such a way that you're getting the answer you need. Like, it's, for example, I was trying to explain over the holidays to my parents how to improve how they Google search. Just typing in a company
I would
name.
love to hear that conversation. That sounds delightful, by the way.
But it's like just typing in a name and like, I got an answer. You're like, yeah, but you didn't really ask the right question.
Right.
And that's been like, it's been the really interesting and amusing thing to watch over the last couple of years is people leverage AI and they're like,
yeah,
you get an answer, but what question did you ask to get that answer? And, maybe you could have probed a little bit better and then kind of ask a much more well-rounded question. And I think that it's the same way, which is, hey, I'm used to seeing my business in terms of these different silos and these different orgs, and they roll up a data set and we combine all that and ta-da, we have a graph and we're good. But it's really, really difficult. And I'm not faulting the business because it's very, very hard to say, were there things that occurred across these different silos that maybe drove something that happened that didn't even make the radar of anyone because it was so under the radar, but it had such a significant impact to the business that had we known that, we could have potentially maximized that and it would have had a huge impact. And I think there's things that happen all the time. You've seen those, we've all seen those happen in small microcosms and organizations. Whatever the company you've worked at, you've always seen like there's always a little thing that happens that you notice. The way someone, does something off book, but they document things in a certain way that has a real impact on your ability to find something or surface something for a customer. Or it's little things that really make up the most interesting aspects of the business, but it's often those things that don't really get understood or known because they just float by. Or, hey, the way we had a bunch of people go to a conference and came to our booth, and we had this little conference in Germany, but the way that data was later entered in Salesforce was a little weird. And so we missed some potential follow-up opportunities, but it turns out some of those people came in and bought a different product. And actually we wanted to be able to connect the dots, but because the way the data was entered wasn't right. And so we missed it all. And I think it's little stuff like that you're like, well, Abby, that's really insignificant in the scheme of things in a business. But at the end of the day, I often feel like it's those little things that really lead to the biggest opportunity and impact, particularly in today's modern world where things are changing so quickly.
To the point of change, give us some predictions of how you see AI being incorporated, injected, or not in businesses in the next year or two. Timeframe to be of your choice, but how do you see, what are some things you think that people aren't quite prepared for that you think are likely to see that more in the future?
I think I'm gonna to quote, I don't know who originally said this, but things will happen very slowly and then very suddenly.
Yeah.
So I think near term, it's going to be very incremental changes, but I think we're going to look up in 18, 24 months and be like, oh my God, the whole business operates completely different. It's like, when I started my career 25 years ago, email was starting to become a thing and we would communicate by email. And then all of a sudden, several years later, how do we live without email? I'm actually not sure. Do we run a business without email? And I think it's going to be one of those same things, which is everyone is doing a lot of iteration and they're trying things out and they're doing a lot of experimentation. And this year is going to be the year we start to see a lot more of those experiments kind of get cemented, a lot of the foundation laid. And we're going to look back in 18, 24 months and see that, 2025 was a year that we started to really put the building blocks together and use them to power our business. And do I think AI is taking everyone's jobs? No. But I do think it's going to give us very different insights, very different visibility into the things that make the most impact into our businesses. And then I think, as us as individuals in the workforce, I think it gives us a really, really great, accelerator. Be it as a developer on those co-development platforms, to the way we all do research, to the way we ask questions, to the way we have AI read our things to help us improve. I think it's a really, really good force multiplier for the way we want to show up and interact in the business.
And what advice would you give to folks in business who, whether in marketing or not, who have a sense of, okay, I get it. I need to better grapple with AI. I need to figure out how to make AI work for us, work for our company. I get it in theory, but I'm kind of struggling to figure out when the rubber hits the road of what can we do? What advice do you have for those business leaders?
Just stay abreast of what's happening and understand what's going on. I think that is the easiest way to understand, and then start to think through, how can I apply this big leap or this work into my day-to-day? Is it me personally? Does it make me a better leader? Does it give me better insights? Do I write better content? Do I have access to better data because I'm leveraging this as a tool? Can I use this to help my teams be better? Do we have an opportunity to help people be more educated in the workforce or enabled, or can I help my team scale? Our teams are doing now more than ever before with less people. So how do we help make our people, help skill them up, but also scale them up to let them leverage technology to make them all individually force multipliers? And I think that requires, much like it did 10 years ago in the early days of digital transformation, enablement always becomes the biggest factor, which is how do you get people both educated and enabled on new technology, but culturally, what does that mean for your business and how does it change the way you operate as a business? And I think those are things that take the longest time.
Yeah.
And just starting to think through that now, particularly leaders that were leading 10 years ago, we did the digital transformation, understanding, how am I going to work through this with my team culturally?
Great point. And last question for you, Adi. I ask this of all my guests. How are you using AI in your own personal life, whether for work, with outside of obviously the project you guys have, but for your own work, and then or just for funsies at home?
Yes, I use all the AIs. I use AI for everything. I've been using Perplexity for the last year and a half, probably. I've used that to fully replace Google search. I don't do search anymore. I go straight to Perplexity. Also, yay, not having ads. So hopefully that stays.
Yeah, no, that's a whole other conversation of how that's going to impact the internet and the world. But yeah, I'm with you. I totally very aligned there.
It's so great to just ask a question. Crazy enough, get an answer.
You don't have to have like 13 links to do a treasure hunt for. You're like, there's the answer. That's faster.
There's the answer. And oh, by the way, here's the link. What you're looking for. You're like, oh, it's magic.
Right.
I also use some ChatGPT personally to do things that, like, we're at early stage startup and sometimes writing things that are pretty common things, but you're like, usually you had to go and sit and create the space to write things like career ladders or, plans and policies, things that are pretty like standard. Like, it's been so great to be able to say, help me write this. And like, ta-da, there you go. Yeah. It's like, I don't know about anyone else, but I find that just magical.
Absolutely.
It's just magical.
I think it's the most tedious writing you do, or tedious things you do you don't like doing. Like, AI is great. And that's what people who are scared of AI. I'm like, just think about the junk you like least in your job.
Yes.
And then sick AI on that. It's like, don't worry about trying to replace your highest value or... No, you do that still, but for the annoying, tedious thing you have to write or the invoices, stuff like that, I'm totally with you.
Yeah, just stuff like that. I use Mem, a note-taking app that does automatically connects the dots between different notes, and you can ask questions of your notes and interrogate it. I was like, I have to write everything down the older I get. And so I have to being able to what did I do on this thing? Oh, that's right.
Right. It's really a good kind of, grounds, a sensible hybrid solution that's capturing thoughts, but not Black Mirror style recording everything you're seeing or doing. Like, I'm not quite ready for that universe where it's...
No. I don't know that I'm ever going to be ready for that.
Yeah, by quite ready, I mean, hell no, never isn't my not quite ready.
That's not I would like to write them down, but it's also nice to say, I wrote this thing down. Where did I put it?
You still have agency there. It's not just like, the big brother AI is following everything because that's only one next step from, oh, cool. Now it has some neural implants capture my thoughts at all times too. And then that's a good too.
I don't think anyone needs to see what my things are.
No one's absolutely no. I don't want to know. I don't want to know what my thoughts are.
I don't even want to know either. Sometimes you're like, it's good that just goes away.
I take great pains in my life to keep those thoughts banished from my own self-recognition. I try.
Exactly. I don't need that stored in some database somewhere. Nope.
Exactly.
Nope.
Exactly. My journal is scary enough. Abby, well, thanks so much. Really enjoyed talking to you. Best of luck to you guys going forward. Really enjoyed it, and take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. Thanks again to Abby Kearns, CTO of Alembic. Thank you to you, dear listener. If this is your first time at AI Curious, please consider subscribing on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all the usual suspects. Drop me a comment on the YouTube video. Feel free to send to a friend, send to your favorite marketing analyst or CMO. Thanks again, and see you next time.